This is Joshua Farnsworth. Welcome to my traditional woodworking school. In this video, Bill Anderstone will walk you through buying an antique moving Fillister plane for cutting rabbet joints. You'll learn what features to look for and some problems to avoid in both wooden and metal moving Fillister planes.
The next group of planes we're going to look at are moving Fillisters. And I've got two types of moving Fillisters arrayed here, a wooden style and a metal style. So looking at these moving Fillisters here, first question is, what's a Fillister? Well, essentially, Fillister is another name for rabbet. A moving Fillister is just a rabbet with an adjustable fence. So the difference between a rabbet and a Fillister is that a Fillister has a fence. Moving Fillisters have adjustable fences. Standing Fillisters have fixed fences. These are both adjustable. And you can see here, if we loosen this screw right here, we can adjust this fence in or out. So that's a nice characteristic of this. And that's what defines the Fillister style plane. These planes here both have an adjustable depth stop. This one is sort of manual. You loosen this screw here and adjust the depth stop up or down as you choose. This one, you can adjust this screw here, and then you can adjust the height of this depth stop up or down as you choose, for whatever depth of cut you might want. The other thing you can see on these two planes here is they have something called a nicker. And a nicker is designed to slice the wood fibers ahead of the cutter when you're cutting cross grain. And that's what makes this plane eminently usable for cross grain rabbets. Two styles of nickers. One of them you can see here is basically a tapered dovetailed piece of metal that fits in a mating slot, and if you push this down far enough, the nicker will protrude below the sole and slice those fibers. Now, if it doesn't quite reach there, you don't tap this to make it go down further, because you'll wind up busting out this part of the sole right here. The nicker will wedge up against the wood and pop it out. You take the nicker out and you file down one long edge of the nicker itself, and then the iron will slip down further, and if you need to, you rework the point here to make that protrude just the amount that you want. So this sort of nicker has a dovetailed slot, and there's a little groove right there to allow you to pop it out with a screwdriver, for example, if you need to take it out and work on it. And we'll talk about sharpening nickers and things like that. This style right here is a different sort of nicker style. Let me just get this out of here. You can see that it's held in this by this wedge in this mortise slot here, and so only this little part here protrudes. And so it's a little bit more complicated. You can easily make this nicker here in the shop. Just hacksaw out a piece of metal and file it appropriately and temper it and harden it and temper it in your own business. This here requires a little more shaping to repair a lost nicker of this style here. And sometimes you can find these things floating around at antique tool shows and whatnot. So we've got these two planes here. Let me just put this back together again. Again, the thing to look for on moving Fillisters, just as with rabbets, is the iron needs to extend a tad wider than the width of the body, and the nicker needs to be in line with that outside corner of the iron to be perfectly functional. In other words, the nicker needs to be slicing just where the iron is going to be cutting up the fibers. So we need to look at that. The other thing is you want the cheek here to be square to the sole. And so sometimes that's not the case, and you need to plane one or the other of these to get them to be back to square again. You notice this plane here and this one here both of them have the corners reinforced with a different style of wood. This is boxwood. The process is called boxing the plane to put a very hard, dense wood in that corner, which gets most of the wear. So it keeps the edge of the plane here, the functional part of the plane, nice and sharp. So that's another thing to look for. Strategically, if I was going to rework this plane to get it back square again, I would make sure that the sole was planed square to one of the cheeks, this cheek here. So I would work on the sole first and get that square, and then I would lightly plane this part here. This is where everything happens. The mortise for the depth stop is here. The width of the iron is based on this mortise here. The nicker fits in here. So you don't want to take down this surface very much. Do all your squaring on the sole, and then a few light passes to square everything up together from this side right here. That's the safest approach. We'll use a moving Fillister in just a little while to cut a joint, and you'll see how well it works across grain.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying watching our video so far, and I just want to take a few seconds to let you know about our traditional woodworking store, which you can visit while taking a class or by visiting our website at woodandshop.com/store. You'll find our amazing products to help you grow in traditional hand tool woodworking, including in-person and video woodworking classes, woodworking hand tools and workbenches, woodworking plans, traditional wood finishes, shirts and hats, and cool hand tool woodworking gifts for you or your loved ones. Okay, back to the show.
Right here we have two variations on metal style moving Philisters. This is a Stanley number 78. There was a 778 that had two posts for the fence here, but 78 has one post like this. So you can see also it's a Fillister. It's got a fence. It's a rabbet plane. It's got a depth stop. And right here, you can see that it's got a nicker device here. It's actually got three nickers and one that's missing. That's so you can use it without the nicker, or you can loosen this up, turn it around, and you can use three nickers over the lifetime of the plane to score that side of the work as you're working. And the depth stop here is adjustable. The other nice thing about these planes is they're sort of like a semi-bullnose plane. You can take the iron and the cap iron here, and you can put them up here on the front part of the plane and get to within this close of the corner of a rabbet, for example. So they're quite useful in that respect. This particular plane does not have an adjustment to advance the iron back or forth. It's manual adjust. So I loosen it, bring it back or forth like this manually until I feel like it's at the right spot. I might hold it upside down, and I would take a little hammer and I might adjust the iron side to side, forward or so, until the exposure along the sole was just the right amount, and the exposure on the side was just the right amount also. So that's the way that. Here's another version of 78 that has a lever adjust that allows you to advance the lever. This one's a little bit rusty, it hasn't been cleaned up, but you can move this iron here back and forth by adjusting this lever, which captures in a series of slots back here on the back of the iron. Let me just show you that. So those slots get caught in this little nubbin right here, and this lever allows you to move the iron forward or back. So later on, Record made a version of this plane that had a screw adjust, which is even nicer. But lever adjusts were common and for advancing the irons there. So this one has a fence, again also, and this fence could be sometimes put on the other side here for if you needed to plane on the other side of a board, so it's slightly adaptable like that. The last moving Fillister I want to show you is this Stanley 289. And it's really like a Cadillac of moving Fillisters. First of all, it's skewed. So it makes a really nice smooth cut along the grain and across the grain. And it's got a space for a nicker on this side. And if you look carefully right here, another nicker on this side. So it could nick on either side of the plane depending on how you're using it. The fence can be put on this side or this side. And the depth stop, you see there's a depth stop here and there's a depth stop right there. So you could use this on the right or left edge of a board. It doesn't have any way to manually adjust the iron, so that again is done with loosening the cap iron and tapping it forward and back and so on and so forth. The other thing is, often people would take these fences off, and then the fence would get lost, and someone would replace a 78 fence on this 289, and if you see how they're mounted, you'll see that the 78 fence doesn't even give support for the cutter up here at the corner, so it's not a functional replacement. This particular fence right here was made for me by my friend Peter Ross, who's a renowned 18th century blacksmith, and he made a very close copy of the original style of fence, of which I'm very, very happy about. So this is a very, very useful plane, cuts a very wide rabbet, wide enough that it'll really make you sweat to use this thing, but quite versatile. If you're going to buy one rabbet plane, and we looked at those other rabbet planes, and now we've got these right here, you would see that I would say a moving Fillister, a wooden moving Fillister, is really quite a nice little plane to have. Very adaptable, depth stop, width of cut, depth of cut, the nicker, the skewed iron, very, very useful. And we're going to do a demo of this tool a little bit later on, and you'll see just how useful they are. This 78, a very common plane, still being made. One of the disadvantages is it's square across, so it doesn't make quite a nice cut along the grain and particularly across the grain. So having a skewed iron like this on this plane here, let me just show you where you can actually see the iron. Having the iron skewed with these other features makes this a very, very versatile plane for rabbet cuts along the grain and across the grain.
If you're interested in learning traditional woodworking, come take a class at our school in Earlysville, Virginia. You can also visit our website at woodandshop.com, where you'll find a bunch of free woodworking lessons, workshop tours, and our very popular tool buying guides. And make sure you subscribe to our free newsletter to get our latest articles and videos. Enjoy!